Okay, Busia Mama Wakwaba Emra TV Ghana is so and then the first time I'll share me and then the first time I'll be platform so and then me pay my minutes of subscribe to it. Me patro we are like I share now the comment at comment section number in kind nyina e di amamo medin ene nana kwame to ahene of course yet na say na say enema pa aban de egu akwam na yede bremu what you say na there was a time ago a former president John Dramani Mahama granted interview to BBC to say to papa so poto ye hu ansem o kan ti ye hu ne sire ye hu na basa no answer kwetena na economy na China and doing a whole lot of sebi insane manosis manaso. Now on the record, the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Vice President Abenyanya, waiting ye Juma Kesia pa. I friend Dr. Mahmoud Baumia and they also a granted interview on BBC. Now and they no was shocking in a journalist no. Your interview no was shocking to say then things that are in the man's head or person what they ba Emma Ebwa Ghana minor. No amanfo mu say ya de pa ebe ma omo corruption akofo mu ntino omo sorry no ene odi atudwa e wo BBC so na the journalist ask say so these are all in your head now. Ghana for opposition sorry na you are incompetent, you are corrupt, you are this, you are that, and you are a whole lot of insane na ye ko insane man na say papa e na no be insane the future what create ewo nani so a opese Ghana empempen so opese Ghana kodru no papa no aka ho nsem bebre na yenso yensa aka bi ye ma ye nche kra yenkonkotie bi embra ye ba ni aka mu nyina no so no ye de beba beto so koso ane fa comment to comment section na making kind e de amamo enra story amebeye no amanfo a kire o madwen ye pa emrepem no meje mre na ya king kind na afi ya bobu hu kakra nti keep your comments coming aha TV Ghana subscribe like afi share. Of course, now the adventure no atwaso edi amame midin ene na kwame etwan yonkomra
all of that. And in fact, even in teaching, you need to be, the information out there is so much, the research out there is so much that with tools you can get succinct summaries of where the research stands in various areas, and you can use it as a teacher to teach your students. Similar with the doctors, they cannot cope with all the most recent information. They can get it using artificial intelligence to get the best. So I think that, and the same with agriculture, you can help. So I think that if we focus it in some of these key areas, Africa can really benefit. And one of the things that I have always said in the area of technology, digital technology, AI, and all of that, is that Africa comes to the table with no legacy systems. we don't have a bed. And so we can make those changes and leapfrog in many areas that the developed countries will find it difficult. So we should not use the developed countries as a measure of what we do. We have to chart our own course. We have to chart our own course because they have a different set of facts on the ground to begin with from us. So different horses for different courses, as Draka would say. So we've got to not be intimidated.
The late Calisius Juma, actually, of blessed memory here teaching at the Kennedy School, has made that point that even the developed countries now has things to learn from Africa. Now, this brings me to the elephant in the room. Energy.
Yes.
More than half of the African population do not have access to energy. So how do you harness the potential of artificial intelligence and other technologies when electricity is not available? What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much. It's a very, very important question. I mean, there are about 900 million people in the world without access to electricity. And about 600 million of them, about 72% of that or so, is in sub-Saharan Africa.
Not just Africa, but
sub-Saharan Africa. And I mean, if you look at energy consumption around the world, in sub-Saharan Africa, it's about 180 kilowatt per capita. It's 180 per kilowatt hour. In the US, it's 13,000 consumption per kilowatt hour. In Europe, it's about 6,500. consumption. So we're at 180, right? And so you see the direct relationship between our energy consumption and economic development. Ours is so low because without energy, you cannot do so many things, in transport, health, in education, agriculture. There's so much that requires energy. If digitalization, artificial intelligence, all those things that we want to do require energy. So it's a big issue for Africa and how we are able to deal with this elephant in the room. My own experience with our situation in Ghana, and when you look at what is happening across the continent in South Africa, in Nigeria, and so on. First of all, we have to make sure that the utilities are financially viable. The lack of viability of our utilities is a major problem because if the utilities are not viable, they are not able to make the investments that are required. And you know that with the energy sector, the lead time for investment is about 4 years before you actually need the energy. And so if you don't put in the investment early on, but if your utilities are making losses, they are not cost recovering, you have a major problem to start with in that sector. In the utility sector, I think the World Bank estimates that we need about 20 billion annually for the next 10 years or so for us to close the gap, right, on electricity. And so if you don't have that incentive for the private sector, because a lot of this investment must come in from the private sector.
How do you energize the private sector?
Exactly. But if they see a loss-making enterprise, they're not likely to invest. So that is one thing that we have to be careful and very deliberate on to make sure that there is viability of our utilities. The other thing that we have to do, because we are working individually in countries, it is very important because, some places we have different comparative advantages. There are some parts of the continent where there's more hydro, some parts where there's more gas. So it requires a deliberate strategy to integrate our utilities. And not only to integrate the utilities, but to integrate the power and diversify the power generation mix towards more green energy. You need to diversify towards more solar, towards more hydro on the continent. We are blessed with a lot of sun. And many places in the Sahel, for example, that you can really leverage solar energy, for example. So I think that the integration of our utilities is going to be very, very important, as well as making sure that there's financial viability and encouraging the private sector to come in to invest in the sector. I think
that's quite interesting. And this brings me to my last question. There is a lot of interest from countries, China, United States, Europe, Africa Conference, Africa this, Africa that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that we have to work collectively together.
Right.
But how is Africa sit at the table during these negotiations? What are your thoughts on African countries, especially the regional blocs, negotiating in trying to bring this private, sector into Africa to go as a bloc so that they can have a better deal than going alone, so that Africa's voice is much bigger and stronger?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it goes without saying that, we deserve as a continent a seat at the table. I mean, we are a major contributor to the development of this world, in terms of our resources, in terms of our population, and so on. We definitely do deserve a seat at the table. And of course, we are a major bloc. The African Continental Free Trade Area has been set up with over 1 billion in population and over 3 trillion economy that we have put together. And so it gives us some marketing power, some negotiating power at the table if we recognize it. Right? You may have the power, but you may still work in very much silos, but once we can recognize and negotiate on the basis of our market power, I think that the rest of the world will listen. So it is in recognizing that we have this to do if we're going into energy, because we have to get our own act together before the world will listen to us. Yeah, I mean, if we go in a lot of the current circumstances, we will not be listened to, but we must be taken seriously, right? And to be taken seriously, we have to do the things that make sense for us to do, and then come together as a bloc to negotiate for very, very important concessions for the continent.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think I have to negotiate an exit from the interview because it's my time. Yes. It's really a pleasure to have you, Your Excellency, to have this conversation.
So much,
and we look forward to receiving you at the Africa Policy Journal in the future.
I look forward to that.
Yes.
This has been a very good experience.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conversation with the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Dr. Mahama Bawumia, with the Africa Policy Journal. On behalf of all those who contributed in making this interview a success, especially our team.
Dr. Bawumia can say, "Omodi baby, your friend personal credit scoring me one. And yes, I need na ababe yejuma. Na sa jumedi no eyadebia ne mu edebeba no eso. Na nipa bi mpese Ghana for bunti. Ya sha se tumfutru egun konfo ani. Asante bo amena ye ni NPP chairperson ewu UK. Any enkomo kakra obaya nika UK dey ofake anti we US anti any obaya any enkomo kakra na omwan say betimi atesa asem na say and the break na nim no e ko so na obadi enkomo no obodu nchichimu e dia ba madam chairperson ti enka e mo achi o
you know the rule me joso alapai
me ba so na ho ye Adia Science about 2:30 2:23 a.m. 2:28 is Adia I see. You now Dr. Bawumia Eden Sebi Eba say the BB be friend of personal credit scoring system. I dey be na yetimi amankrofo dey to create me the Ghana card atoka efia car atuyaka. Enya some kitwa you will be at the paya jo hu nyasem e bi crying to me and 9 minutes say how is that possible say obetim the Ghana card akwakoje car and all that mo de mo chabuchi and sa system yin for mamo sa ade no madam e di ade na kwa be na fa so mo di adwuma ho na ibetina e bi o Ghana ha na
Minia, whether Megas lecture on the phone, the matcha or tea phone or a phone, I'm going to pay. You're coming, you're coming with your Chiapaju and my accident Ghana for Matibe. Credit scoring system, idea. And so Ghana, the young family are working into a man, I won't go for you, kissing and say, you declare possible. But they are which radio, and they don't say, to me, any other stations. No, be devoted type, no more fraud which is for. No, it's metric and countries only use our system. Now, get match you, Madame Aponia, just yes, idea, a year of you now, yes, sort of about winning the summer, let's add you to back at Midibagana, not Ghana for, I would say, and I say, card and program here no bottom. It's me a day I will hear the bill a moment of a dwarf. I make a half credit calling here. Because I shall, and you see, car, you do my name will come her and ready to be a dinner call her. So far for top dime, a dime here about 500,000 US dollars. But catch you out in a few and do something to out this with your top dime. And it's almost the same year maybe I will get to her ama obi a paso to dan obi o paso to car. Na ketia I will not see na appointment to car no, appointment to dan no. Ya di dem na what you can kaka then say a mark kaka passage and kaka within a period of 30 years, 15 years, 5 years. So this makes you based on the car unyano bosumi dia. Na no this actually scoring apa. And you say a number dia ya di month. Ya bureau sa ya decide me di assurance. Nti ne ya di number amount. Na number no say we are credit wealthy as an individual. So we need to be over utia no on time. Ya ka say dia 15th dia na say utia okana 15th utia so utia na basic record month kata na individual you know kane what economy asa anyhow bosome bia utia no se we do him nti we we nyina no na o bureau bia also I score bia o ma sese ho we ya tutu ni ya grade nti ese wo hwe we ya payment history. So payment history good so bosome bia so na so tia no ma ne mpa ho so ma ne pa ho dey later ekutia so utia no before another during the time also utia na eboa no percentage I assign to some number no where 35% for credit history. And now okay we did it o car loan na utia o dan car